Well, good afternoon. My name is Michael Wallent. I'm a general manager in the Windows division at Microsoft, and I'm responsible for the Windows Client, Platform, and Documents team. My team includes the work that we do related to the project codenamed Avalon that we heard a lot about this morning, as well as our digital documents efforts, which I'm sure we'll hear more about as the conference progresses. So what I'm here to talk to you about this afternoon is to lay out a real roadmap for the presentation platform offerings that Microsoft has. And when we think about that, we really think about it as creating a universe of experiences. And our vision here is not to create one single platform that solves everybody's needs all the time, but rather to create a family of platforms and tools that really help developers deliver what their customers want. And we're really about creating those client experiences. Fundamentally, what we do to get that to happen is to build the platforms and tools to really improve and radically improve the quality of the experience for their users. Who here was at the preceding presentation in this room? Kind of hard to see. So a few people. So that Project Max experience, we believe, radically improves the way that people share information and visualize information. And that's just the kind of application that we think can be created with this sort of approach. So let's talk a little bit about the recent past related to user experience. So, back in 1995 and prior to 1995, when people used PCs, they used client applications. But an interesting thing happened with the creation of the web. Kind of the world split into the experiences with the web and the experiences with Windows. And HTML in 1995, if you can remember back that far, I remember going to sites talking about microwaving Twinkies and dancing hamsters. People really sacrificed a lot of the user experience for great portability, great connectivity, and great simplicity. Even having something like mask edit fields was pretty common in Visual Basic back in 1995, but until very recently was very, very difficult to do in the browser. In 1997, Microsoft introduced IE4 and dynamic HTML, and I worked on that team and went around and talked to people around the world about building dynamic HTML. Wrote a column for MSDN that was titled "The DHTML Dude," which I've still yet to live down. And we really envisioned that as interactivity for the web and let people really have programmability of all the elements on the page. And the interesting thing that happened is that it was used a little bit from 1997 up until about now. It was used for menus, used for toolbars. There were some interesting sites that were created, but it wasn't really heavily used. In 2005, though, we've seen a number of companies do really innovative stuff around discovering dynamic HTML and using really the platform features from DHTML to the XML HTTP object, which is actually in IE5. To create user experiences that are even better, that are differentiated. And what we see happening is that having a website, having a service, having a commodity really isn't enough. To distinguish and kind of stand head and shoulders above the crowd, user experience does matter and it does win. So let's talk a little bit about Windows. So back in 1994, we introduced the Win32 APIs in Windows NT and Windows 95. And it really allowed a real new level of functionality for already installed applications. It was funny going back and seeing this morning, having Jim run a Windows 1 application. And I think it's easy to forget what things were like just 20 years ago, which is not really all that long ago. So Windows 95 really brought a whole new level of functionality for Windows applications. And there were a series of libraries built on top of that, from Visual Basic to Microsoft Foundation classes. Wallent and others had libraries on top of that as well. And then in 1996, we introduced DirectX, which was our gaming platform for Windows, and has really led to a real resurgence in graphics hardware. There's tremendously powerful graphics hardware available for the PC today. Lots of great games available, even one that we demonstrated and was shown today in the video. Interestingly, those two worlds didn't really connect at all in terms of the way that the graphics was actually rendered. In effect, in your PC today, you have the Windows, the GDI world, and either the DirectX or the OpenGL, really the graphics hardware world, and never the two shall meet in most circumstances today. In 2002, we introduced Windows Forms, which was a layer for developer productivity on top of that Win32 API, which made it remarkably easier to build Win32 applications, but the power in the platform was still limited and is still limited by the underpinnings of Win32. So what we see for 2006 and beyond, effectively in the bits we're giving you today, is rising demand for richness, and in many ways a re-merging of what we think of as web and what we think of as Windows, and really delivering a common, very, very rich platform for experiences. So, talking about developer experience and user experience, we really feel like there's a developer conundrum here. Customers certainly want a better experience. There's no doubt about it. Experience A good, experience B better. We'll choose experience B every time. But what we believe is that developers are really limited by at least 3 factors in delivering a better user experience. So first of all, they need to determine how much reach they need and how much platform they can actually depend upon. Do they need to target every customer in every device, no matter where they are, no matter what network status they have or whatever machine capability they have? Or are they more willing to sacrifice a little bit of reach and a little bit of control to guarantee a better platform underneath? Or do you have the commodity of actually owning the environment that you're in and be able to dictate what platforms and what experience the customer has? Secondly, there's a big challenge around developer capability. The Windows Presentation Foundation that we demonstrated this morning in the keynotes, and we have so far today, is built on top of Direct3D. And it's using the machine capabilities exposed through Direct3D to build out the user experience. And to do that, it turns out we had to effectively rebuild a lot of the underpinnings of Windows to do that. Now, someone could have done this without our help and build the rich experiences that you saw, but it was really, really hard and really, really expensive. And if you wanted to work with accessibility and with terminal server and with localization, it's really hard. So was there some limitation in the platform that made it impossible to do it? No, it was really a developer capability and cost issue. So many times developers are limited by what they can afford to do and how quickly they can get something done. Thirdly, there's a real sense of inertia in many applications today. Travel agents on the phone calling up an airline system sometimes still use character mode systems because it's quick, because they know the keystrokes. I was actually talking to one of our devs last week as they were getting ready for the PDC, and they were typing incredibly quickly, and they basically said, look, I still use the Emacs key commands because I remembered it and learned it 20 years ago, and I'm never going to forget it. So to really get over that inertia that exists in those systems, we have to produce systems that are more usable, not just by 10%, not just by 5%, but remarkably better, 50%, 100% better, with much more customer attachment and customer love. So we would assert then that having that better experience really leads to differentiation for your experience and really to customer value. And just some examples of that. Clicking through it. So from a consumer software point of view, just 3 examples. An HTML picture example. HTML pictures on the web, static. There's a number of different places I can get this today. We'll demonstrate in a little while an example of pictures in the context of a map going with the Atlas virtual Earth style model. And then built on top of WinFX, we saw with Project Max, the Atlas 3D view. Certainly, those experiences going from a static list to a somewhat interactive list, which really isn't a list anymore, it's graphically oriented, to something like Max, that's certainly stepping up in user experience and stepping up in the platform requirement as well. But productivity software, there's that same step up. MSN Hotmail today, it's pretty good, it's ubiquitous, lots of people use it. But every time you interact with the client, it round trips back to the server. You get a whole new page. I know we've had some network issues so far here at the conference, and those page refreshes can be pretty painful. We'll demonstrate for you in a few minutes a beta of MSN Hotmail using Atlas technology, which, much like Outlook Web Access, doesn't require the round trip to the server, does use web services, is interruptible, gives you a much better user experience. And then Outlook. And we saw a great demonstration of Outlook this morning in the keynote. That really is the ultimate experience in terms of client capability. And we at Microsoft installed or support the RPC over HTTP through Outlook with Office 12, and boy, I use that all the time as opposed to using Outlook Web Access because you just get much better management in the system. So, we saw this slide a couple times this morning, and let me kind of add a little bit to it. We think about the client experience as scaling from HTML to what we think about as rich islands all the way to smart clients. And certainly for HTML today, we have the DHTML solution in Internet Explorer, and the IE7 team is actually doing a lot of work continuing in DHTML to make it even better and a better platform for building rich applications. And then for smart client solutions, we'd think about Win32 as the base technology there, with user and GDI as the fundamental way that we build presentation technology, Windows Forms as our managed code layer on top of that, and then Direct3D as the way that we get directly to that graphics hardware. So going forward, though, we're using Atlas to make DHTML programming easier and more productive. And we're introducing Windows Presentation Foundation as a way to build more powerful smart client applications for Windows Vista and Windows XP. And for Rich Islands, as Jim announced this morning, we have Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere, or WPF-E, which is a small, lightweight runtime that we intend to make ubiquitous. So let's drill into what we think are the critical factors in evaluating presentation technology and see where each one of these things stacks up. So let me talk first about the titles here and kind of explain what framework we're using. So first of all, powerful and productive programming model. I think we'd assert that the elements of having a powerful and productive programming model include object orientation, the ability to subclass, the ability to have both interpreted and compiled code. Those are all elements to having a real powerful programming model. For user interface, having good controls, good forms, ability to interact with servers and other technologies. Reading and documents, the ability to take text, be able to flow it and make it very readable. Having the basic presentation technology of that be robust using technology such as ClearType. Also having the capability for fixed format documents, much like XPS or XML paper specification, also codenamed Metro, that lets me have a fixed format version of a document where the document looks exactly the same no matter the device or the machine or the screen size that I'm looking at it. And then from a graphics and media point of view, we'd assert that having great sound, great animation, good hardware accelerated video, and also having hardware acceleration across the board in the graphics platform are elements to having a rich presentation platform. So let's look at each one of the technologies that we've talked about. So, Win32 with user and GDI certainly has a good programming model. I can write compiled code against it. It's very fast. Most of Windows is written using this technology today. Does a pretty good job on user interface, although you're generally limited to positioning elements absolutely. Doesn't really have a solution for reading in documents out of the box. You have to write it yourself. And from a graphics and media perspective, again, GDI, pretty good, but not really using the hardware in most scenarios. So Direct3D, again, it's a Win32 style programming model. Doesn't really cover anything except for graphics and media, and it does great with graphics and media. That's fundamentally what it's all about. Windows Forms really gives us a great programming model on top of Win32. Does an even better job in user interface because it extends the number of controls that you have available for your use and gives you a great .NET model on top of it. Doesn't really do much for reading in documents, just doesn't cover that. And in graphics and media, it gives us a good access layer on top of GDI Plus and on top of GDI, but again, not hardware accelerated and no animation system built in. Windows Presentation Foundation, as you can imagine, because we designed it to do this, we wanted to have it be built on a real powerful programming model, which is .NET, have great user interface controls, do a great job with reading in documents, both fixed format documents and flow documents, and have hardware accelerated graphics, hardware accelerated media, and a great animation system with full access to sound and everything else. So kind of moving kind of in the other direction from a reach point of view, HTML itself, not even dynamic HTML, there's really no programming model to speak of. The Netscape 3 model for having access to the list of images on the screen didn't really quite do it. Does a pretty good job on user interface, although there's some things that are certainly lacking. For reading in documents, does a good job on text flow. although formatting the text can be pretty hard. And for graphics and media, certainly in basic HTML besides images, not so much. Dynamic HTML does a little bit better job on programming model. We would assert that because of the complexity and the script-only nature of it, it probably doesn't give us kind of the real full programming model that developers demand. We believe that with Atlas, we lay a great programming model that has client and server symmetry and also can use .NET on the server as well as JavaScript and some libraries on the client that we'll get into more in a few minutes. But it's kind of stuck with the platform and stuck with the platform hand it was dealt. Doesn't really make the UI a lot better, although there's some things it does do quite a bit better job on. And from a text flow perspective, it kind of is what it is. And Windows Presentation Foundation everywhere, we're going to have the XAML plus script model, no compilation and not subclassing likely because it is not built on top of .NET. It's an unmanaged component. We'll do some stuff on user interface, but we have to make it a subset to make it small and portable. So we'd say probably yellow there at best. Not really focused on the reading and document scenarios. It's more of an interactive content scenario, not the rich text flow, multi-column text support that we've seen today and we'll see again in a little while. And on graphics and media, we'll do a good job on graphics and media, but it won't have the full, necessarily the 3D support or all the hardware acceleration that the full-on runtime would have otherwise. So let me drill in a little bit into ASP.NET Atlas and talk about what their goals are. So fundamentally, it's really about taking dynamic HTML experiences and making them better. So what they wanted to do is to have a framework for building these richer, more interactive, more personalized experiences on the web. Good goals to have. So how are they going to do that? So one thing is making developers more productive with dynamic HTML. The platform, as I've said, it is what it is, and it has a lot of latent capability in it. But it's been challenging for developers used to standard development practices and tools to really dig in and make it as productive as possible. We saw Scott Guthrie today do really quick stuff, really amazing stuff using the Atlas libraries and having it work cross-browser. They're very tricky to do. Really, one of the focus points here is to make it easier to debug and maintain, hiding a lot of the browser-specific code into the libraries that are built into Atlas so that you don't have to spend the time and energy rebuilding the browser compatibility libraries up. The other thing, and I'll demonstrate this or give some code examples, where they wanted to have great symmetry between the client and the server. So if you were an ASP.NET programmer and you were used to the ASP.NET server-based programming model, you can use Atlas Technologies, works great. If you are a DHTML developer and just want a little bit more power and want to have more access to web services, well, you can use this too and it'll make sense to you. So that symmetry is really important. And we saw this morning that in fact Atlas is a cross-browser solution. We saw it on a Macintosh running Safari, and we saw it running on IE7 with the Windows Vista. And it does run other places as well. So tomorrow, I'd point you to this PRS 312, which is a real deep dive into Atlas. And there's actually a part 1 and a part 2, which I'd encourage you to go to if you're interested in finding out even more about this. But let me actually show a little bit more. So from an architecture point of view, and they'll show the same slide tomorrow, there's a set of technology in Atlas that's about a client script library, about extending the functionality available for developers on the client. Bunch of stuff around browser compatibility, as I mentioned. Extensions into JavaScript to make it effectively object-oriented within JavaScript. That's really that component model and UI framework. And a set of very powerful controls and components that can be easily reused within your applications. Then from a server point of view, they basically take those same controls, run them as server controls, where as opposed to it being JScript and kind of control composition on the client, rather the server emits the HTML and some code behind it to create that same user experience. Also a lot of work to make it even easier to connect to web services and ASMX services. And this is all built on top of the really powerful foundation of ASP.NET 2.0. So let's talk a little bit about some examples here. The code examples may have flashbacked pretty quick this morning in the lab, so let me kind of drill in a little bit. So when we're talking about client-side scripting, and this is really what's going on here, this is the client-side example. The first thing you'll notice is that input. The input is the same HTML input that we all know and love and have used thousands and thousands of times. And you put that on the page just like you would, and you lay it out just like you would. Think of it almost as a template for where you want your input to go. And then we see something interesting down below, which is a script block with this type of XML script. Effectively, what this is a declarative markup that will be interpreted by Atlas on the client to deliver your functionality. So what this is saying is we have the input, but the input is hooked up to a text box. Text box is my Atlas programmable object that extends the native functionality of the input. And we see it points to this target element of text1, which goes back again to that input. But then down below what I have is I have an autocomplete. Now what that's doing is that's pointing to a web service, this myservice.asmx, and pointing to a web method on that web service, getCompletionList. So as the user types, they'll get the automatic completion in the input, which is pretty cool functionality. And basically you've defined the behavior for that text box. Works very, very well. And I think we'll demo that later on in this presentation. So besides these sort of automatic complete functionality, there's a set of other behaviors. Again, you can get the full list tomorrow from Shanku in his presentation. Should be a good talk. There's also support for data binding and data support within the application. We saw that in the lab again this morning. And again, you can build this up on the client declaratively, as we see here, and there's procedural analogs of this as well, which gives you the ability and the comfort to program it however you see fit. So from a networking point of view, networking is built on top of XML HTTP, again, ubiquitous across multiple browsers, and it hides the implementation details so you don't care whether you're on Safari or Firefox where it's built in and on Internet Explorer where it's a COM object. So what we have here, and this was funny, this was the example that was pointed out this morning as wrong, but it actually is the way that this works, which is pretty cool. So we see the first script source equals, where it's actually pointing to myservice.asmx, but with the /js option, what that actually does is it returns back basically a .js file that gets parsed on the client that defines a local JavaScript proxy object that I can then call methods on, which is a very cool way to have my server send logic back down to me. I'm not getting XML back over the wire. I'm not getting some HTML that I have to parse. I'm getting JavaScript, which essentially introduces new objects into my system that are then in scope and lets me call. Super powerful way to do that. I was blown away the first time I saw this. So what we see here is the myservice.asmx brings in the myService object into scope. So what it's doing is it's basically calling the getItemsByName method on the myService. And then the other thing that it's doing here, and this gets to the kind of initial library or the script library that the Atlas folks wrote. This $ syntax, what this is doing is this is actually a shortcut for getElementsById. So you don't have to type getElementsById every time, and it actually does the right stuff to cache the document object to have better performance in the script. So $results data source essentially gets the results data source object by ID and then calls the setData method on that object. So it's kind of powerful. So from a server perspective, we've seen both these things now working on the client. The server controls wrap up the UI functionality and the client-side functionality, but actually let you express it on the server. So I have the script model, or I have the script model, or I have this model here, where I have the Atlas namespace, the Atlas text box that's actually doing the programming on the server side, interacting with my server-side script that I could create. And we can see the run at server command, which essentially says, yeah, this is server side, and actually I'm going to be programming and interacting with this purely on the server side. So it's up to you. Got a great JavaScript library that really raises the bar on the client. You can program those elements on the client declaratively or procedurally, or you can program them on the server if you're an ASP.NET old hand and you know how to really make that happen. And again, PRS 420 tomorrow, ASP.NET. It's the part 2 of Shanku's talk. Really highly recommend it. Should be super fascinating. I've seen the slides. Really impressed. So with that, seeing is always believing. So let me invite up Arik Cohen, who's a lead program manager on the Windows Presentation Foundation team, to actually walk us through a couple demos of this.
Thank you, Michael. So let me swap over to demo machine. I'm going to actually show you a couple different examples here. First is actually the new MSN Hotmail beta. How many people here have seen the new MSN Hotmail beta? Has anybody seen it? A few hands pop up. To get more information on this, and I believe that Walter will be giving an opportunity for people that have a Hotmail account to get onto the Hotmail beta and get the really rich Atlas-based environment, you can go to his lunch session tomorrow where they really talk about how they built on top of that Atlas technologies. But the most important thing to realize here is it's showing the real application of the PDC of the Atlas technologies. You have a really rich experience, a richer DHTML experience. Michael, I just got your email. I guess you wanted the final slides. Sorry, I probably should have gotten to you. You'll notice that as we selected different ones, oh wait, somebody else on my team didn't want me to screw up. Okay, I'll try not to do that. We can actually swap between the different email messages. And one of the things that has been found by the Hotmail folks as they've gone through and done a bunch of user research is for people that have a lot of email, going with the standard HTML post response really slowed people down in being able to handle it. In fact, I'm going to take a couple of these emails and shift select them the same way that I would shift select in my rich client application or in Outlook and actually delete all of those. Sorry, I think that those work. I can actually go into Michael. Let me give you the version of the slides that I've got on the machine here. Let me scroll up here. I can go in and attach these slides. Attach a file. We'll grab them. I zip them all up together. You'll notice that at this point it's scanning and uploading, submitting them via web service. But it actually takes a little while. So as Michael talked about, it's a cancelable web service. So I'm not going to actually send him the final slides. I think it's probably a little bit too late for that. So you can cancel out at those points in time. And you can also take advantage of some of the higher level controls that are available via Atlas. So you'll notice here that we've got the toolbox. I can actually start typing and get the autocomplete functionality using that very little bit of JavaScript that Michael showed you, or also using the ASP.NET server controls as well using the Atlas. So we're really using some of our own properties. Hotmail is one of them, to really provide a training ground for understanding how these Atlas technologies can be rolled out and how they can make you much more efficient in making it happen. The second application here, the second Hotmail Atlas application is a little bit of an LA travel guide. I know that we're going to be going to the attendee party out at Universal Studios Hollywood, so let's start doing a search for Hollywood. And you'll notice that as we start typing it in, I get the autocomplete. And we'll take a look at the code for it to make that happen in a second. Do the search, get a really rich data binding back. Here we're once again going out to the web service, bringing back the result set, and actually binding it to a few different spots on the page. One is this list box here along the left that has its own template for how it displays. And the second is on top of the really rich virtual Earth control. So we can, in fact, go over here and take a look. No, it's not the Sony Pictures Tour. It's not the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's actually the Universal Studios. And you'll notice that you had some rich level of animation support as things faded in and out in getting a really more compelling DHTML experience using Atlas. In fact, I can go here and just view the source so that you'll see it's exactly the same type of stuff that Michael showed in the samples that we saw. So the client-side script calls out to the activity service. We get the button click. We get the data back from the get element by ID. Hook it up to the on search complete. When that comes back, we set the results to the two different list boxes that we have. The search results 1, which is the item on the left, and the search results 2, which is the virtual Earth model on the right. So with that gives you a little bit of an understanding of what is the type of experiences that you'll be able to build with Atlas, and hopefully that you'll be able to get a lot more information on that throughout the week.
We've got lots more demos, too. We'll bring a recap again. But that's a good introduction. So first of all, before I get into Windows Presentation Foundation, I'm going to give a little color clue for those of you in the audience. So all of the folks on my team wearing the orange shirts, stand up. So if you want to find out more this week about Windows Presentation Foundation, we all bought orange t-shirts because we stand out that way. So you can ask anyone with the orange t-shirts, and hopefully they'll be able to give you more information on Windows Presentation Foundation. So, our goal, as the t-shirts say, is to help you build the applications you always dreamed of. We've taken this approach to try to build a platform that really delivers a unified approach for building user interface components, document components, and media components. The integration really works in two axes: the way that people develop the content and the way that people experience the content. We didn't want there to be black boxes of documents or black boxes of media or black boxes of video. We wanted there to be a consistent experience for customers as they experience the applications that you dreamed of and wanted to build. In order to do this, we fundamentally needed to build out new Windows infrastructure effectively from button up. The buttons that you see in Windows Presentation Foundation, as well as the list boxes and everything else, are all brand new code. And it was written that way to really take advantage of the underlying graphics infrastructure that gives us hardware acceleration and a much smoother user experience than we ever could have imagined. The graphics model is a retained model, retained graphics model, so you don't have to deal with WM Paint events. We have some experience rewriting applications that were GDI and GDI Plus based and switching them over. And what we noticed is a lot of the code that people write in those GDI applications to deal with things like flicker and double updating and white flashes, all that tends to go away. You don't have to write that anymore because it's all handled directly for you. The underpinning system, the graphic system, moves from a bitmap-based model that we saw and knew and love in GDI to a vector-based model, which lends itself much more effectively towards hardware acceleration. And we wanted to build this new modern Windows infrastructure on top of modern development frameworks and patterns. Have it be object-oriented, allow for subclassing, let you get at the entire system. And very specifically, not to have a world where there's an underlying platform that we have a layer on top of, and if you choose to do more than we intended in the layer, that you fall off the side of the world and you get into hook and a WinProc and kind of repainting yourself. We never want there to be the analog of the owner draw list box or owner draw window in Windows Presentation Foundation, because we always want you to be able to easily plug in and kind of just do exactly what you're looking for. The other thing that we think is really seminal here is that designers and tools matter. We think about design and designers as very much the fourth discipline in software development. And as we saw in the keynote demonstration this morning, saying designers matter is more than just saying, yes, we like to have pretty application. It's about building an infrastructure such that designers can do their work without messing up the work of the developer. I want to be able to have the great developed, highly performant, accessing data, totally secure application, and then I want to style it after the fact. Or maybe I want to do the style first and build the application secondly. But I have to do that in a way that really separates style from procedural programming and from declarative programming. And we believe that with Windows Presentation Foundation, we've done that. So briefly, let me talk a little bit about the Windows Presentation Foundation capabilities and the four areas I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. Document services, user interface services, the media integration layer, you may hear us call it the mill, and also some base services. Immediately after this talk, Rob Relier, one of the senior program managers on the Windows Presentation Foundation team, is going to do the lap around Windows Presentation Foundation, which again, if you're interested, I'd really strongly encourage you to stay and see what Rob has to say. So let me go through some of the services and kind of what we think the real distinctions with the difference are in this platform. So the base services, and this is actually the button that comes up, maybe not quite this size, but the button that comes up when you have the following markup. So I have a button, it's got a name. Everything's got a name, we're used to that, it's the way we program against it. But the interesting thing here is it's got a background. Now, I talked before about never wanting to have owner draw, right? To me, owner draw means you've fallen off the face of the earth and you've got a real problem and you don't really like that anymore. So what's going on is the background of the button can be effectively an arbitrary set of other WPF stuff. It can be other controls. It can be other vector resources. It can even be a set of animations that can be styled and added onto that object after the fact. And here I have a compound object. I have a radial gradient going from white to blue. Now, that is purely in the style of the button itself. I could have it be an animating image. I could have it be animating vectors. It wouldn't matter. And it wouldn't have the HTML problem of when I click on the button, what on earth do I exactly get the button click on? Do I get it on the text? Do I get it on the image? Do I get it on something else? Because HTML is a great example of a system where the split between the actual programming model and the presentation hasn't been split properly. If I have the HTML button tag and I put some text and an image inside of it, when I click on that button, sometimes I get a click on the button, sometimes I get a click on the thing inside, where the styling has actually disrupted the programming model of the element itself. And then the button contains the OK text, which means that we have an OK button. So the other thing here is that we believe in a world where you can have declarative markup and you can have procedural code, and they are peers. So the C# and the VB.NET code here are the exact analogs of the code that exists on the markup side, on the other side. This came from hard-won lessons with Internet Explorer, where the way that you write code in using COM against Internet Explorer is remarkably different than the way that you write code in JavaScript, which is remarkably different than the way that you write markup in HTML. There's kind of weird exceptions and rules and security model issues across the board. We wanted to make sure that in this platform that was not the case. So besides this XAML support, the base services in the platform include accessibility, which is increasingly an important issue for application developers. In the United States and across the world, in order to sell applications and software to governments or to companies that have government contracts, they need to be accessible. And accessibility is actually really, really hard to get right, and this platform supports it. Let's see. So, media integration layer. We saw 3D and 2D kind of across the board this morning. So just a few kind of simple examples here. From a vector graphics perspective, I can have path. Here's some data about that path itself, its stroke color, and its stroke thickness. I can have media elements. Here I have a Windows Media video file that I can just include in very simply into my system, and I get the appropriate transport controls on that. And then I have other interesting things that I can do, and we saw this kind of in many, many examples this morning, including draping a 2D surface over the Earth in Chris Anderson's last part of his lap. And that was done with something we call a visual brush. A visual brush is effectively a resource that I create that has the rendering of any set of stuff, 2D stuff, even other 3D stuff, that I can then use as a surface to paint on any other 3D surface. So here I've set up a visual brush which has my button. It could have been my radial gradient button. And then what I basically do is I create up my 3D model, and that actually takes a few more lines of markup that I'm not showing here. And then I basically take and set the material brush, this diffuse material brush, to set up to this resource. And that resource, by the way, is a reusable resource that I can actually put in multiple places in my application. So I actually get resource sharing, and it doesn't actually chew up a ton of memory, as something like this can tend to do. So 3 other talks on this down at the bottom. An overview of Vista Graphics, and this Advanced Graphics, two talks, part 1 and part 2, that will be coming up over the next couple days in the conference. Really encourage you to check this out if you're looking for more information. So in the media integration, we talk about the composition layer. Composition lets us put the elements together. And this morning in the demonstrations we saw of the Windows Vista desktop with the thumbnails and the Flip 3D and the glass window frames and the window composition, this actually uses this technology in order to display the Windows Vista desktop. So the Windows Vista Desktop Window Manager is the name of that application, and it's powered by this piece of technology from Microsoft. So on top of that, what Jim described as the library on top of the core are the set of user interface services that we support. In there's a set of application services, being able to deploy an application over the internet, use it inside the browser, have it be a standalone application, have the appropriate security model, as well as a rich set of controls and intrinsic data binding through the system. we're wholehearted believers in Anders Hellsberg's statement this morning about data being ubiquitous in applications. And we've tried very hard to make sure data binding is a first-class thing inside of Windows Presentation Foundation. And to that end, what we see here is an example of a list box that actually is data bound to basically just an object, this my data source, which could be a .NET object, could be a web service, doesn't matter, which would actually do the appropriate repeating and templating as was discussed this morning. The other thing that we add and have invested in significantly in Windows Presentation Foundation is the layout services. You can lay things out in flow, you can stack them, you can absolutely position them. These are all intrinsic elements to the platform, and we think it's really critical because you want developers to be able to deal with user interfaces that are multiple form factors, from very small tablets that may be running at 1024 by 768 or even 800 by 600, all the way up to large widescreen monitors at very high resolution, but also at very large screen size, where you want the application to scale appropriately. Layout and programmable layout is really key to making that work. And you can see a set of 5 talks that let you drill in for more information here. PRS 314, using application services, how to deploy apps, what the security model is, how to design applications. PRS 317, using data. Highly recommend the data talk. It's fantastic. 324, advanced layout technologies, also really critical, really helps you save a lot of time. 329, and 330, building rich content experiences, both media, audio, and some text stuff in there as well. So on top of there, document services. This example is about taking and creating an XPS document and opening up an XPS document which was already created, and then signing it digitally and closing it. And then the screenshot you see on the right is actually a screenshot of our XPS viewer running inside the browser, actually of my presentation. So we could save out using our printer driver, actually create an XPS document from PowerPoint and load it up in the browser. So document services, really 2 separate things there. The XPS support, which is both the markup subset of XAML, which lets us do absolute positioning of glyphs and 2D elements on screen, as well as the packaging services, the ability to put those things into a container. It's a zip-based container that has all the elements required for the document, then let me sign it and manipulate it in other ways. And then the other part of document services is around flow documents, having bottomless flow, also paginated flow that we saw a little bit of this morning, and some interesting views to have like multiple page up views or even multi-column support for real enhanced readability in the system. And here's a couple examples here, PRS 330 and PRS 333. 333 is really about XPS, and 330 is about flow document technology. So with that, let me invite Arik back up, who's going to give us some more demonstrations of Windows Presentation Foundation.
Thank you, Michael. So I wanted to bring up a quick app here and actually switch to the right machine first. And actually close off what was here before. And we've worked together with Allscripts, which is one of the leading of medical records vendors as far as looking and interacting with medical records. And we've looked at how can we provide a better experience using the Windows Presentation Foundation that makes the end user's job easier, provides a capability for an integrated experience using the user interface, the media, and the documents, and really brings together the business value proposition for the end customer there. So what you've got here is, you'll notice, a really rich presentation view of kind of a dashboard for the doctor. I can actually flip through the different patients and get a nice 3D rotation that syncs to the appropriate data that's available for that, giving the doctor really the similar feeling that they have as they're flipping through their notebook. So bringing the common UI metaphors that they're already used to the PC as well. In this case, I've got a new patient that has become available. I can view, hey, I've got a doctor at a different hospital that wants to transfer that patient. I'm going to accept that patient transfer. We'll flip over to that patient. We can see a little bit more information there. This particular prototype application is also using one of the components that is provided by one of the control vendors that is out in the exhibit area today. So SoftwareFX has a chart control that they're going to make available for people to download and to start playing around with, that's available in Windows Presentation Foundation applications, and that's what we're using to draw all these charts. But what does it mean to be able to draw charts in Windows Presentation Foundation? You can have a much richer experience. In fact, we can go in here, zoom in on this chart, and take a look that at this spot, we can say, hey, on the 8th, we actually had a particular snapshot and actually have an ability to interact with it. We can also go take a look and say, hey, there's problems with the artery here. So I might want to go take a look at the ultrasound that's available as far as getting more details here. So really rich templated binding approach that lets the developer take these controls, the stock controls that are provided by ourselves with the Windows Presentation Framework, as well as with the overall the ecosystem that exists for additional controls, and really provide a really rich experience. So I can go into the patient details here, flip in. You'll notice on the left, we still are monitoring all the rest of it. All the data is in real time. I can actually go in and take a look at the diagnosis for this patient. It brings up the text. This is the rich flow text that Michael was talking about. You'll notice that as I maximize this, I get multiple columns approach. I get a really rich ability to interact with it. What that allows me to do is take this and scale it, either whether I'm running here on a projector at 1024 by 768, or on my widescreen display, or on my tablet in any way. I can also interact with that document by doing full annotation support with that document. So I can go add ink annotations if I'm running on a tablet. I can also go add regular annotations as well. I'm going to actually back away from that. And we saw that the ultrasound was the area that we needed to look into. So I'm going to bring up the ultrasound. You'll actually see that the ultrasound starts playing here. But there was an annotation that was put up that there was an area of concern. So it pauses the application, the video playing at that point in time, shows the annotation that was done via an ink tablet application, or you can actually take the same thing. We can resume here. I can actually want to add another one now. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to say that maybe we should look. Oh, and there we came up. We'll look right here, and I'm using a mouse here, so it doesn't work as well as with that. So is this the problem? Anyone out here know if this is the problem? If so, then we'll take it and make it available for other people to contact you. So we can go and snap back and forth between all the annotations. So you see a really rich integration of the 2D content, the UI content here, media, and documents. Lastly, I can go and have a better way of analyzing all the content. So I've got one of the charts up here. I can go take a look at the other live monitors that are available. We'll bring in this one. This one have really rich support here. I can actually drag them into my workspace and start analyzing the data. Because one of the most interesting things that is the big challenge when you have all of the data that's available to you is, how do I analyze and figure out how that data all works together? And how do I visualize that in interesting ways? Here you'll notice we composed all of those three charts together, one on top of the other. I can also go take this in 3D and rotate it and try to find out where exactly the problem is. So this gives you a little bit of an example of how you can use the Windows Presentation Foundation to really provide rich business value and integrate the UI, media, and documents together to create really rich experiences. Yes, I can.
Thanks. Okay, so let me talk about Windows Presentation Foundation everywhere. So our strategy with this is to create a subset of Windows Presentation Foundation that we want to make really small, really fast, and we want it to run everywhere. And I don't just mean Windows everywhere, I really mean everywhere. So Windows, Macintosh, devices, you name it. Our goal here is really to focus on scenarios that you'd like the richness of Windows Presentation Foundation, but you really need more reach. And much of the technology that we've showed is really tuned around working great on Windows, hardware acceleration, full .NET platform. But what if you could take a subset of that and actually have it work in real interactive content-focused scenarios and have it work anywhere? We think that'll be a huge value add for our customers. So from an implementation point of view, we'll include vector support, image support, video support, support for animations, for text, and also for some controls. Things that we think are kind of outside of the scope of that, kind of full-on 3D support, because that often needs hardware to do real effective 3D and 3D animation. Kind of adaptive documents, that columnization that we saw before, that actually is a pretty heavyweight thing to do, as well as extensibility. So our model here is that we have a subset of the markup plus JavaScript that you can build to, and with not a built-in way to build additional components into that system. We'd love your feedback on what sorts of things you'd love to see everywhere, and really note what scenarios you're most interested in bringing everywhere, because again, this is still under development. From a packaging point of view, we see both what we call a loose model, where we have loose files plus the script embedded in the files, as well as potentially a packaged up version of the files that can get interpreted as well. We want to make the components for this both hostable and programmable once they're hosted, in that we'll build an ActiveX control version to be hosted in Internet Explorer on Windows, as well as various plugin technologies to be used on Windows, as well as other platforms and devices. And then you can use those same native or ActiveX models to host that inside of your applications as well. Once you then host it in an application, you can write code against it using COM on the Windows platforms and where COM is available, and using just flat API access in places where COM is not available. So one note here is for the subset itself, we're very interested in licensing the markup and object model subset. So if you are interested in that, please contact me afterwards, because we're interested in making this as ubiquitous as possible. So with that, seeing is believing on this one. So let me actually ask Arik to come back up, and we're going to go through a couple WPF-E demos.
So I guess this is, I think, the first for me at a Microsoft conference that we saw both in a keynote and in a session like this, that we're going to show a couple other operating systems running this. So let me swap over here and realize that I had left the screensaver on, but luckily I know the password. So I'm running a Macintosh here, and we wanted to show you some of the early runtime that we have available here. Just to prove that it's real, we've got this trombone.xaml, which is one of the files that I'm going to open up. It's just a standard XAML file. You'll take a look at it. It has the same experience that you can have there. All of the content is identical. It's a subset of the Windows Presentation Foundation XAML that you would use in the full application. And then I can fire up Safari here and take a look at that trombone and see it render live within with a plugin object in Safari. So this is all kind of showing the vector graphics support that is built into the Windows Presentation Foundation everywhere. So as I scale the window, I get a really rich experience across the board. Can open up a couple other documents. So for example, this one. We also said that there's animation support and a broader than just the fixed format kind of static content. So you'll notice here the PDC logo animating in appropriately from the side. So we've got what you're seeing here is an early runtime of the WPF-E running on the Macintosh. So that shows a little bit of what you'll be able to do. No one's impressed by it. Okay. So given that, I'm actually going to swap over now and realize that this one also had a screensaver on it. But I also know the password. So we're actually going to show you an application that we put together with Logic Bay, who is one of the leaders in providing instructional learning. Explicitly, in this case, they're providing an instructional learning example for 3M. If you think about computer-aided training, it really met an impasse about 10 years ago, same time that the web came about. Before that, computer-aided training was a very rich experience on CD-ROMs that got distributed, and then everyone decided they wanted to go to a web-based experience that was easier to send out, and you had to really scale the experience back. And we actually found that the productivity of people understanding how understanding the content and working with the content really changed there because they didn't have the level of immersive experience that they were really demanding. Here, 3M, if you remember in PDC 2003, we had a few challenges with people getting in on the first day. Michael, I think you were one of the people included, with the fires here. So we thought it would be a great example to go in and take a look at online training for 3M fire prevention products. So here is a really rich application. You're noticing kind of an immersive experience that you would not be able to have when you're outside of the browser. The other thing that's interesting here, actually, is that this is a web browser application. A web browser application is a Windows Presentation Foundation application that runs within the security sandbox within the browser. Full integration with IE 7 and above, and has a really rich experience so that you can have the immersive experiences with all of the convenience of running within the browser and the expectations that people have there. So there's a couple different ways that people need to learn, and the way that computer-aided training really helps there. The first is kind of a free-form simulation. So you'll notice here I have a nice vector model of my room here. I can install an electrical conduit. That actually opens up an area, right? So it opens up a hole in the floor. And if I were actually to look at the fire, it would actually spread all the way up, right? So this is something that it's negative reinforcement. I see that the fire goes up. Me as a contractor, in order to use the 3M products, you actually have to become certified beforehand. So what I'm actually going to go through here is a little bit of the training that you go through in order to get that certification project. So I get that I install electrical. I can apply a couple of the 3M products, this pillow and the putty. You'll notice that they appeared up on the screen. And now when I start the fire, it stays and is contained to the first floor. So I get the positive reinforcement when I use the appropriate products, but I've got a free-form way of really interacting with the simulation. I can actually then go into an even more interactive experience here. So all of this running in a web browser application. I can go take a look at the electrical conduit. No, that's not the one that I'm going to look at in this particular situation. We'll go drill in on how do I actually get understanding of using these products and experiences, and how do I use the products when I'm going around a heating and air conditioning vent. So I can play the video, have a really rich, immersive experience, once again showing exactly how I have to apply the product, and really make myself capable as a contractor to understand what do I need to do when I'm actually out in the field. Once again, I can get a little bit more information. There's a variety of different products. There's the fire barrier putty. There's the sealant. One of the more interesting aspects of computer-aided training is you don't want to give all the information in the application itself as while you're going through the test and all that. You actually have to learn about the products. So I can go learn more about the product. I actually am navigating out to the web page, the standard web page that 3M has available with the more information about this particular product. I can actually go take a look at the brochure here, launch the brochure, which in this particular case is an XPS document, have a really rich understanding of what it is, drill in, get more information, and then I can hit back again, and go back into my application. Now, the most interesting thing here that you'll notice is we just went out to the web page and went back into the application without losing any of the application state. So this gives a very rich experience to integrate back and forward with your traditional web-based applications that are HTML, DHTML-based with Atlas, as well as a richer, more immersive application using the Windows Presentation Foundation. But now I actually have to prove that I understood what happened. So the contractor here, Pete, his business depends on me actually learning it. So this is a part of the certification process that I have to go available. So he's setting up the challenge for me, and I actually have to go do things appropriately. So we're trying to set up, well, I noticed that there's actually a hole here around the heating and air conditioning vent. So I'm going to pull over this particular product, which actually is a combination of products, and I failed. And this is the type of situation that actually really causes problems. But so how do we get more information so that I can understand exactly how do I get and pass my exam so that I can actually do things appropriately? I can review go in via the resources that are available. So we've got the negative reinforcement that comes from Pete himself, as well as the additional resources that are presented by the software and the computer-aided training by LogicPay here to give me more information on how to do it. I can go in, look at that. You'll notice that here we have rich integration of the HTML content and that within the application. So you can navigate out, You can put it within your application, however you'd like to display it. So I think that I'm not going to go drill and find out all that stuff, but I'm going to try again and guess. I think it might be this one. This is the type of training that they probably don't want people just guessing. But in this particular situation, I got it right. So I can move on, and now I'm appropriately trained. Let's say that I'm certified, and now I want to go move and be on site. So the next demo that I'm going to show you is actually running on one of the devices that you guys had the opportunity to purchase this morning. So we're actually going to go and show you. Let me jump over to here. Got the device here. We're taking the same content, and now I'm actually, you noticed I didn't pass the test with flying colors, so I'm probably going to need a refresher when I'm out on the out on site doing my first installation. In fact, I can go and start up my 3M application here, running once again the Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere components. Animate that up. You'll notice that you have a rich integration of that. And I have the same resources that were available to me with giving me the system selector and giving me access to more of the content. And in fact, I can go play the same exact video that we were seeing up above that basically will show me how to apply that product appropriately in the scenario. So using and creating the content once, integrating that content across the HTML website, across the XPS documents, across to devices, as well as web browser applications and the full browser applications, is really what the power that we think that we're going to provide with Windows Presentation Foundation.
Oh, here's my little. Lots of demos. So, again, we really see this as a family of platforms that really can be used in multiple different scenarios. So what I wanted to talk about for a couple minutes is what the sweet spots are for each one and really when to choose the right technology. So we believe that ASP.NET Atlas is a great platform to use when you want the reach of dynamic HTML and when you want application level features. Fundamentally, whenever you want to do HTML and DHTML, Atlas is a great solution. Direct3D continues to be the way that people can build high-performance gaming and games on Windows. We continue to invest heavily with DirectX 10, Direct3D 10, and we saw some video of capability of that this morning. Windows Forms, good forms technology to use, built on top of Win32 using the Win32 platform technology with .NET when you want reach across more than Windows XP and Windows Vista. Windows Presentation Foundation, we think of that as our new Windows platform that we're investing in. And when you want to create new immersive experiences for next generation Windows applications, we think that's a great choice. And Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere, great for choosing the Rich Islands solution. Also works great with Atlas. And it's really focused on interactive content scenarios across multiple platforms. So we wanted to make sure that these technologies could work better together as well. ASP.NET Atlas can actually target the Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere runtime as well as Windows Presentation Foundation itself. And Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere, WPF can be used as an ActiveX control to add islands of richness either on Windows-based browsers or on other based browsers. We saw in the last example from Arik how WPF, how applications can actually be hosted in browser, targeted in browser from your web servers. And we've seen many examples of how WPF can be used to build standalone Windows applications. With respect to Win32 and WPF, WPF allows the hosting of HWinds, and also within a Win32 application, you can host WPF controls itself. And we've worked really hard to make sure that WPF and Windows Forms, both being managed code, can actually work together very well. WPF apps can host Windows Forms controls. Windows Forms apps can host WPF controls, and you have a good degree of overlap there. And there's 3 presentations here that I'd call out that you can check out to get more information. 313, which is a talk by Nick Kramer, which is a good talk, talking about Win32 and MFC integration. Works really well. Windows Forms and Windows Presentation Foundation, 321, and 334, which is WPF and WCF, or Avalon and Indigo, using the illicit names, equals magic, that talk. So, to close, and then I'll take some questions for about 10 minutes. We're really trying to build platform technologies that really help empower you to build the experiences that your customers demand. We really think there's a broad number of ways to do it. We're not trying to build the one-size-fits-all solution. In fact, we think there are many ways to do common things, and we want to make sure that we have solutions that really meet all of your needs all the time. Fundamentally, as Jim said this morning, though, we think that the wave in 2006 with Windows Vista and Office is huge. It's a wave that can create tremendous opportunity to refresh your applications, to make additional money around that. And then also, hopefully, it's a great wave to build additional functionality for your line of business users to really help improve their overall productivity. So with that, I'll thank you for your time. Hopefully it was informative, and I'll take some questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can we hear you say whether you'll support Firefox on Linux with WPF?
Can you hear me say that? Can you hear me say that?
It's a reach question. You know, we're trying to know what we can use for reach.
Here's the challenge. I don't know whether we will write the code ourselves to do that, but we want to make sure there's a version of WPF on Linux that works in Firefox.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that's the answer you were looking for. I could have said no. That would have been easier.
If WPF is built over DirectX, what happens with terminal server and RDP?
That's an excellent question. So what we've actually done is we've enhanced terminal server such that the low-level MIL protocols that we talk to the wire actually get sent over the wire, and we really radically improve the performance of terminal server with WPF applications. We expect that WPF applications running over terminal server, even without animations, are faster and much better than GDI-based applications.
So same answer for RDP?
Yes. It's an RDP extension. It's an RDP channel for the additional data. Is there people standing? I can't see. I'm blinded by the Klieg lights. Nobody at that microphone. Okay. Yes, sir.
WPF looks a lot like Flash. What is it going to give us that Flash doesn't give us today?
It's a good question. So, we did WPF based on, demands from our customers that they wanted to have more reach with the technology that we have. We think that the tools integration we provide, the development model we provide, and the fact that you can scale from a WPF solution either down or up really gives our customers what they want.
Yes, Atlas seems a great solution for providing rich user interface and interactivity. It doesn't require postspec and everything. But it looks like you're going to need to write a lot of JavaScript to create custom behaviors and to create this rich experience. Have you done anything to make it easier to write JavaScript and to customize the behaviors and to create the code behind it and make it work? And also, second question is, what is the future? What is going to happen to the application that we start developing now with Atlas? In other words, what's going to happen 2 years from now? Are we going to have to throw away Atlas and replace it with WPF?
Okay, good question. So on the first one, we haven't shown a lot of Atlas stuff yet, but I think that the goal of Atlas actually gets to exactly the point that you were raising. I mean, think about for a second how hard it would be to write the JavaScript behind to do the autocomplete behavior or the drag and drop behavior that we saw. You actually don't have to write a lot of JavaScript. On that autocomplete behavior with the search fill-in that we saw, Arik showed all the code for that. It was like 4 lines of markup around that. And then in addition, from a JavaScript programming perspective, there is that base library, like that $ example was kind of cheesy, but it does really reduce the amount of code you need to write. Plus there's object services and object support and some browser cross-compatibility layers that should really help reduce the amount of JavaScript that you have to write in your applications. With respect to your second question, this gets to the family point. We believe in DHTML and HTML as a platform. We're doing a lot of work to make that great. We're also building, rich client solutions and smart client solutions with WPF. And in the demonstration, with the 3M demonstration, we showed how you can interop those two things together. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here, and we believe that the most important thing we can do here is show great interoperability so that you can decide what platform you need to do to meet your business needs.
Over here, you're right.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay, 2 questions. When will the WPF for XP ship?
WPF for XP is basically simultaneously shipping with Windows Vista. So that'll be generally available in the second half of 2006. We've had community technology previews out since last September. Those generally ship for release candidates a month or so before the beta goes. So you should be able to get good versions of it, quite early next year.
And the second question is, does the drag and drop UI development create XAML, or how's that going to work?
Can you be more specific about what you mean by the drag and drop UI development? I'm not...
Like Visual Studio, you grab a UI widget, put it on a form.
Okay. So with Visual Studio, I'm going to step away from that. With Visual Studio, you have designers that target the solution you want. There's Windows Forms designers, and there will be WPF designers as well. And there should be, actually tomorrow in Eric Rotter's keynote, there'll be some good demonstrations of those tools. Yes?
What's the time frame for having WPFE available?
Not announced at this point in time.
Previously, WinForms was the preferred migration path to move to Avalon. With the intro and the emphasis on Atlas, does that bring the ASP.NET on a par with WinForms to move to Avalon?
I think what we were saying before is if you're building smart client solutions, Windows Forms is the way to do it. And I think we'd still assert that Windows Forms is the smart client solution. Atlas really raises the bar on what you can do with dynamic HTML. But we believe that the client architecture you would build with a smart client solution for Windows Forms is closer to WPF than would be an Atlas client-based solution. So I think we'd still say Windows Forms to WPF is the preferred migration. Although one of our big points on migration is to separate your business logic out to web services to have appropriate projectability onto different clients. And that really remains the same no matter what you're doing.
Thanks.
Yep. Is there another question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So where can I find out more about that cool Logic Bay 3M demo that we saw?
Oh, okay. So thanks, Karsten. Karsten Janikowski, one of our evangelists. And I actually have one more slide. So there's a booth over in the... Tell them where it is, in the product fair, right?
Yeah, in the Vista Product Pavilion.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karsten. Okay, so one more thing to plug, which is, I listed a bunch of sessions. There's 45 plus sessions on everything to do with smart client technology and browser client technology. You can go deep in a bunch of different places. There's a great talk coming up right after this with Rob Relier going into Windows Presentation Foundation. You can find the orange shirts around. I'll be wearing ones shortly. And we'd love to talk to you and get your feedback. And we'd love to see what you'd love to do with our platform. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the show.